Today we are going to be diving in deeper into chapter 3 since we just took our quiz over chapter 3.1 and 3.2. So now that we're more familiar with expressions and simplifying them, we are going to go into equations and how to solve equations. So the first thing that we are going to talk about is equivalent equations. And so equivalent equations is if two equations have the same solution. So two equations are called equivalent equations if they have the same solutions. So for example, if you had the equation a plus 5 equals 7, and then in another equation, b plus 5 equals 7, these are two equivalent equations. So a plus 5 and b plus 5, these are equivalent equations because they have the same solution as 7. So basically, if we want to say equations are equivalent, they have to have the same solution. And for me, this is kind of easy to remember because equivalent, it's kind of the same as saying equal. It's very similar to equal. So equivalent equations is very similar to saying equal equations. All right, so let's try some examples of solving equations. So the biggest thing when you are solving equations is you want to undo the operation. So I'm going to write this out, and I want you guys to make sure that you write this out on your paper too. Undo the operation. So this is kind of key terminology that we need to remember when we are trying to solve equations, undoing the operation. So for example, in A, it says solve x minus 5 equals negative 1. And so we need to look at what operation first is here, x minus 5, and we need to undo that. So to undo x minus 5 equals negative 1, think about undoing that operation of subtraction, x minus 5, undoing that operation of subtraction. To undo that, we're going to have to do the opposite. And what is the opposite of subtraction? How would we undo subtraction? Well, to do that, we'd have to add. So we're going to add 5 to undo that operation. And when you add to one side of an equation, you have to add to the other. So we're going to go the other side of the equal sign and add 5. So now, on the left side of the equation, minus 5 plus 5, that cancels out. So we're left with x equals, and negative 1 plus 5 we know is 4. Because remember, whenever you're adding a negative and a positive, it's the same as subtracting. So we're left with 4. And so this is our answer, x equals 4. And you can always go back and check your work, and I would recommend when you're taking a quiz or a test to do this. You can go back in and substitute in 4 for x to check our work. So let's do that right here. If we substitute in 4 for x, we would have 4 minus 5. And what's that equal? Negative 1. And that is our answer up here. So we know that x does equal 4. All right, let's try B. So this time our operation is addition. We have z plus 3 halves equals 1 half. So we want to undo this operation right here of addition. So to undo that, we're going to say z plus 3 halves, I'm just going to rewrite this out, equals 1 half. And to undo addition, to do the opposite of addition, we're going to want to subtract. So we're going to subtract 3 halves from both sides of the equation. So 3 halves minus 3 halves cancels out, equals 0. So we're left with z equals, we have 1 half minus 3 halves. We have the same common denominator, so we can just go ahead and subtract. So we have 1 minus 3, which equals -2. So, and I'm going to go over here because I'm running out of room. So I have z equals -2/2 or -2/2. And as some of you might already know, 2/2 is just 1, but it is negative, so we have z equals -1. And just like we did the first time, if you want to go back in and check your work and plug -1 in for z, you should end up getting, or you will end up getting, this 1/2 if you go ahead and plug in that -1 for z, which you're welcome to pause the video and do if you want to check your work. All right, so I'm going to have this video pause so you guys can try 1, 2, and 3 on your own. And then once you put your answer in, we will go over them together. But I just want you guys to really quick look at these 3 equations with me and think about, 1, what operation is being used, and 2, how am I going to undo it? What is the opposite? What opposite operation do I have to do to undo this? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pause so that you guys can complete number 1 on your own. All right, so number 1, p minus 5 equals -2. So obviously our operation that's being used is subtraction. So to undo this, we're just going to do addition. We're going to do the opposite, subtract 5 by adding 5 to both sides of the equation. Those 5's equal 0, they cancel each other out. So we're left with p equals -2 plus 5. And remember, when you're adding a negative to a positive, that is the same as subtracting. So we're left with p equals 3. All right, and number 2, w plus 13.2 equals 10.4. So our operation is addition. So to undo that, we would have to subtract. So we're going to subtract 13.2 from both sides. These cancel out, so we have w equals 10.4 minus 13.2. And if you go ahead and stack those up and subtract, which you guys should have done, you're going to end up getting w equals -2.8. -2.8. All right, and our last one that you guys were supposed to do on your own, x minus 5/6 or 5/6 equals -1/6. So this operation is subtraction, so we're going to want to do the opposite of that, which is addition. So we're going to go ahead and subtract add 5/6 to both sides. So we want to do the opposite of that subtraction. I'm going to write it this way. So when we're left with that, those 5/6 cancel out. So we're left with x equals -1/6 plus 5/6. And -1 plus 5 equals 4. So we're left with 4/6 or 4/6. And this is not in simplest form. And so I want you guys to remember, just like we did in the beginning of the semester, learning about how to make sure things are in simplest form, we're still going to continue doing that now. So 4 and 6 can both be simplified by 2. We can divide these both by 2. And so this means that x equals 2/3. And now we are in simplest form, and so our answer is x equals 2/3. All right, I hope that you guys got those 3 right, or if you didn't, by watching the work that I did, you're getting a little bit better understanding of what you did wrong. If you're not, please come see me and let me know what is still confusing you with these 3 practice problems.